again. In this video, we are going to review a little about approaches and methods in teaching grammar. Then, we will look at grammar section in the new textbook Tiếng Anh 7 Tập 1, Unit 5, a closer look too, to see what principles it follows and how activities are organized. And then you'll have a chance to look at one communicative production activity which is suitable for this lesson. Now, let's get started. In terms of approaches, there are two approaches to teaching grammar. The first one is deductive approach. In this approach, teacher starts with a presentation of a rule and then provides examples in which the rule is applied. For example, in your class, you tell your students that to talk about something happening now, they must say subject and then to be and then verbing. So, students follow the rule. Meanwhile, inductive approach starts with some examples from which a rule is inferred. For example, in your class, you tell about your last vacation in which you use a lot of simple past tense. So, students understand that simple past tense is to talk about things happening in the past. To sum up, we can say that deductive learning means learning from rules or rule-driven learning. Inductive learning means discovery learning. Coming with the two approaches, there are three ways in which a grammar point can be presented. In deductive teaching, teachers present grammar from rules. Following inductive approach, grammar is presented from examples and through text. Okay, let's start with teaching grammar from rules. These are the steps in teaching present perfect from rules. They should be familiar with many teachers, right? Teachers give the name of the grammar point. Teacher can say, "Alright, today we are going to learn about the past perfect." Then, teacher gives the form, rule of form. Teacher can say, "The past perfect is formed from the auxiliary have plus the past participle." Then, examples. Teacher says, for example, everyone had laughed, or the film had started. Checking is essential to see whether students understand or not. Following rule and example of form, teacher may check. So, what's the past perfect of they go? Next, teacher gives the rule of use. Teacher says, it is used when you are talking about the past and you want to refer to an earlier point in the past. Teacher then provides examples to make it clear and understandable to students. Teacher may say, for example, we are late. When we got to the cinema, the film had already started. And then checking students' understanding of meaning. Teacher might say, did the film start after we arrived, at the same time as we arrived, or before we arrived? Finally, teacher illustrates by drawing and says, we arrived at this point of time A, but I need to refer to an earlier point in the past when the film started, here B. This method is time-saving and straight to the point, but rules can be difficult to understand for teenagers. This method also supports teacher-centered classroom and gives students the feeling that learning English is all about memorizing rules. Now, let's come to the second method to see if there are any differences. Teaching grammar from examples. Following this method, teachers provide a lot of examples in meaningful contexts. Students study examples and understand the rule. It is similar to the way a child acquires the first language. It is done simply through exposure to much input related to the language. So, it can be called the natural way of learning. However, it is noticeable that examples must be provided in meaningful context. Now, let's look at one example. If you are teaching present continuous and you mind the action of drinking and say, I am drinking water, or point at you and say, I'm teaching English, there's nothing wrong with the two examples. However, in real life, we never drink water and say, I'm drinking water. Or we never say, I'm teaching English to describe our action, right? The two examples lack a context to support their meaning. So, instead, teachers could set a context of a criminal case and say, look, this is Detective Sherlock Holmes. He is investigating a murder case. What is he doing? He's looking for the murderer. Where is the criminal? The criminal is hiding in an old house. In doing this, students have better understanding of the function of present continuous. So, in teaching grammar, what is the grammar point and how to use it are equally important and go hand in hand. We are going to see the role of context more clearly in the third method, teaching grammar from reading or listening extracts. Let's look at this example. This is a text which can be used to teach the passive. As you can see, there are numerous examples of the passive form in it, like was attacked, was beaten, was admitted, was discharged, etc. In teaching grammar from text, the first step is to draw students' attention to the context and the content of the text. Teacher should ask questions related to main ideas and also important details. Like in this example, teacher may ask students to look at the title, Dog Attack, and ask students questions to find out what they expect to find in the text. Then, ask them to read the text quickly to find out important details of the text. For example, who was attacked? Where? How badly? The next step is to help students understand the function of the grammar point in that context. Teacher may take two sentences of the passive voice from the text, like Jessica was attacked by an unsupervised dog, and then emphasize the meaning, the usage, and the form of the passive sentence. Then comes practice. Alright, we have just looked at two approaches and three methods to teaching grammar. Now, let's look at one grammar section in the textbook. As I said, this grammar section is taken from Tiếng Anh 7 Tập 1, Unit 5. First, we'll look closely to see how it is organized and the features of this section. Then, we'll decide on what adaptations we could make and why. Now, let's see. At the presentation stage, the grammar section begins with a simple and a student-friendly note on countable and uncountable nouns and phrases to do with them. As you can see, with examples and visuals like this, it is easy for students to understand. It also provides other phrases to go with uncountable nouns. Then, it follows by an exercise in which students decide which things are countable and uncountable, and phrases to go with uncountable nouns. This is reasonable because exercise 2 gives straightforward practice to raise students' awareness of what countable and uncountable nouns are. From students' performance in this exercise, teacher can decide whether students understand the target grammar point presented previously or not. After that, teacher introduces the use of countable and uncountable nouns together with words of quantity, or we call quantifiers, in different types of sentences. The use of a, an, some, any in affirmative, negative, and interrogative sentences are clearly clarified in this table. Then, there are two exercises, game Give Me an Egg, and exercise 3, Get Feeling with quantifiers. At this point, would you like to change the sequence of the activities? Let's have a look. Let's think about the purpose of activity 2. Clearly, it is for students to decide what noun is countable or uncountable and provide quantifiers. This practice is at word level. However, it is put after the presentation of the target grammar point at sentence level, so it can make students confused. Moreover, it is limited to the use of some before uncountable nouns. So, it is advisable that teachers should let students add as many suitable quantifiers as possible so that they remember more. And more importantly, activity 2, the game, should be after presentation 1, and activity 3 should follow right after presentation 2. Then, the lesson continues with the third presentation of making questions with how much and how many. And then, exercise 4, in which students finish the sentence by how much or how many. Now, let's see some strong points of this section up to this point. It can be said that this lesson is well organized, and the activities have reached the aims of the lesson. It is to teach students about asking and answering with countable and uncountable nouns and qualifiers. First, the presentation of the target grammar point is divided into 3 parts. Each part deals with one piece of knowledge for students to apply. The knowledge is arranged from easy to difficult one, or we can say from word level to sentence level. This makes it easier for students to understand. Second, each part of grammar presentation is followed by 1 or 2 controlled practice exercises. This helps students reinforce the knowledge they have just learned effectively. Let's now look at the last activity. The lesson ends with the interviewing activity with prompts given. This activity aims at students using the target grammar point to talk about their own information. This is a good activity for less controlled practice in the production stage. However, this may be easy for some strong class because, as you may know, prompts are provided. and it could be boring as students know what they are going to ask and answer. In order to make the activity more challenging for students and create a more exciting atmosphere in class with information gap feature, teacher may try the following suggested activity: role playing. Here is the simple procedure to follow in conducting a role-playing activity in class. First, teacher explains the situation. Then, teacher assigns roles to each student. Next, teacher explains what students are going to do. After that, teacher models if necessary. And finally, students perform the role play. Now, we are going to follow the steps in role playing to practice countable and uncountable nouns and quantifiers. The first step, explaining the situation. Teacher may say, "You are going to the market to buy some food. Think for a moment about the things you will buy. Tell me one of the things you want to buy." Teacher elicits 2 or 3 things and write on the board like this. And then, teacher encourages students to make their own shopping list. Step 2. Assigning roles. Teacher elicits 2 roles of shopkeepers and customer by saying, "Imagine you are in a shop now. There are 2 important people in the shop. The person who sells things and the person who buys things. What do you call the person who sells? What do you call the person who buys things?" Then, teacher assigns rows of shopkeepers to one row in the class and row of customers to the other row. After that, teacher gives out the roll card to each student and asks them to study it. These are examples of 2 roll cards for shopkeepers and customers to support them with the language. Step 3. Explaining what students are going to do. At this stage, teacher explains in details what students are going to do, what sentences or questions they should use. For example, teacher might say, "What does the shopkeeper say?" Student answer, "Can I help you?" "What else does the shopkeeper say?" Student may answer, "How much do you want?" "What does the customer say?" Student may answer, "I want," "I need," or "Do you have any?" Step 4. Modeling. Teacher may call one student in class. Teacher acts as shopkeeper and student acts as customer using their shopping list to do the role play. Finally, students work in pairs to role play. After most students have finished, teacher may switch their roles so that all the students in the class have chances to ask and answer. To end the activity, teacher may ask some students to report about their shopping experience, like what they wanted to buy, what they could buy, what they couldn't buy, whether they could bargain, etc. Then, teacher provides some feedback for students. So, we have just looked at one communicative activity in a grammar lesson. What do you think about the activity? Do you think your students will like it? Is it possible to apply it in your class? Let's try and let us know in the reflection. Goodbye.